The workshop smelled of oil and old wood. It always had, not sharply, not like something noticeable in passing, but like a presence that had lived so long inside these walls that it stopped being separate from them. The smell had settled into every surface, every drawer, every crack between floorboards, until it became less of an aroma and more of a memory the room kept breathing. Henrik no longer noticed it, except on rare occasions. When he left Bruges for a few days and returned late in the evening, the moment the door opened, the smell would greet him, not strongly, not urgently, just enough to remind him that nothing here had changed while he was gone. Like an old friend who never learned how to leave. 43 years. That was how long this workshop had belonged to him. But more than that, how long he had belonged to it. Tonight, there was no travel, no interruption, no reason for change. Just the end of an ordinary Thursday. The kind of evening that does not announce itself as important. The kind that passes through life unnoticed while quietly becoming part of it. Henrik closed the door behind him and stood still for a moment. Not tired, not waiting, just present inside the stillness he had learned to trust more than noise. Henrik was 70 years old. His hands were steady in a way that no longer had anything to do with youth. Over time, he had discovered something most people never learn. Precision is not speed refined. It is patience repeated until it becomes natural. In his younger years, his movements had been faster, slightly impatient, always trying to reach the result before fully understanding the process. But time had corrected him gently, not through loss, not through punishment, through repetition. Thousands of small repairs had taught him that the world does not respond to urgency. It responds to attention. Now, even the smallest motion of his fingers carried quiet certainty, the kind that never needs to be explained. Inside the workshop, 3 clocks continued their work after closing. A tall wooden floor clock from 1820 stood against the wall, its rhythm deep and deliberate, like something remembering how to exist 1 second at a time. A small mental clock with a cracked glass face waited on a shelf, still incomplete, still patient, as if time itself had agreed to pause its restoration until the missing piece finally arrived. And his personal clock rested on the workbench, not for sale, not for repair, not for display, just there. It had been given to him by his father on the day he opened this workshop 43 years ago. Since that day, it had never stopped ticking. Its sound was not loud, but it was consistent enough to feel like reassurance, a small proof that something in the world still followed rules that could be trusted. The 3 clocks never agreed on time, and Henrik had never tried to make them agree, because agreement was not what mattered. Continuity was outside. Bruges was already sinking into night. The canals had turned dark, like ink stretched across stone. Streetlights reflected in broken patterns across wet cobblestones, each reflection trembling slightly with the movement of rain and water. Tourists still walked through the streets, but their pace had changed. Earlier, they had been searching for photographs, stopping, framing, capturing. Now they simply moved, slower, quieter, as if the city had finally stopped asking to be observed and started asking to be felt. Henrik sometimes watched them through the workshop window. He had learned to recognize something subtle over the years. There were people who came to Bruges to see it, and there were people who came to feel it. The difference was never spoken. It showed in how they moved. The second group always slowed down without realizing why. The last object on his bench that night was a pocket watch. An old man had brought it earlier in the afternoon. 80 years old, perhaps more. His hands trembled slightly, not only from age but from something deeper. The accumulation of years that no longer asked permission to be felt. He had placed the watch carefully on the counter, as if it contained something more fragile than metal. "It belonged to my father," he said, and before him his father. He did not ask for perfection. He did not ask for restoration. Only one thing mattered. "I just want to hear it again." Henrik understood immediately, because that request was never about mechanics. It was about memory finding its voice again. He opened the watch slowly. Inside was a small mechanical universe. Brass gears layered like history itself. Springs coiled into restrained motion. Dust so fine it seemed more like time than matter. The fault was simple. A bent spring, not broken, just altered. The kind of change that happens so slowly it does not announce itself as damage until silence becomes permanent. Henrik leaned closer under the warm lamplight. The metal reflected softly, like something remembering how to move. He did not rush. He never rushed anymore, because he had learned a truth that years of work eventually reveal. Anything that survives time deserves time in return. And outside, somewhere beyond the glass, Bruges continued breathing in rain and reflection, while inside the workshop the clocks kept disagreeing gently, each one insisting that time was still happening, even if none of them could fully agree on how. The watch did not come back to life loudly. It returned the way most forgotten things return, not with a moment, but with a change in atmosphere. A small hesitation inside the silence, then movement, then rhythm. Henrik listened without expression, not because he was unimpressed, but because he had learned not to interrupt the moment when something decides to exist again. The pocket watch ticked, carefully at first, then with confidence. Not perfect, not precise enough to impress another watchmaker, but alive in the only way that mattered. He let it run on the velvet cloth for a few minutes. He did nothing. This was part of the work too, the part no one paid for. The listening, the waiting, the confirmation that time had accepted its return. Outside, Bruges had changed again. The rain was thinner now, more like memory than weather. The canals reflected fewer lights, as if the city itself was slowly dimming its attention. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell moved through the night, not announcing anything, just existing inside the air. Henrik thought about the old man, 80 years, a life measured in long repetitions and smaller losses. People always believed they were asking for an object, but what they truly wanted was continuity, a way to touch something that once belonged to someone who no longer could be touched. He closed the watch carefully, not as a technician finishing a job, but as someone returning a voice to its silence after briefly borrowing it. The old man returned the next day. He did not speak much when he entered. That was expected. People rarely spoke at the moment they received something they had been waiting for longer than words could explain. Henrik placed the watch on the counter. No ceremony, no explanation, only a slight nod. The old man opened it, listened, and for a long moment, his face did something very small, something that could almost be mistaken for nothing at all. But Henrik recognized it immediately. Recognition does not need volume. Outside, Bruges continued its slow rotation into morning, wet stone drying, light returning carefully, as if it was unsure whether to stay. The city never rushed its beginnings, neither did Henrik. That evening, after the shop closed again, something unusual happened. One of the clocks on the wall stopped. Not the broken mantel clock, not the old floor clock, but his father's clock, the one that had never stopped in 43 years. Henrik noticed it immediately, not with alarm, with stillness, because some changes are not events. They are questions. He did not touch it that night. There are repairs that do not belong to exhaustion. He left it silent, and for the first time in a long while, the workshop did not feel like it was speaking back to him. It felt like it was waiting. That night, Henrik walked home earlier than usual. The canal was darker than he remembered it being. Not emptier, just less reflective, as if even the water had decided to stop mirroring things it could not hold anymore. Inside his apartment, he did not turn on many lights. Only the small lamp near the window. He sat with tea and listened, not to clocks, not to rain, but to the absence of something that used to be constant. And for the first time in decades, he wondered something he had never allowed himself to ask. If a clock stops after 43 years, is it broken? Or is it finished with the person who built it? He did not answer. Sleep came slowly, not like rest, but like distance increasing between thoughts. And somewhere in the silent workshop across the street, the stopped clock did not move. Not yet, but it was no longer completely still either. As if something inside it had begun remembering how to begin again. Morning arrived quietly, almost apologetically. The first light slipped across the rooftops of Bruges and settled on the narrow windows of Henrik's workshop. Dust drifted through the pale beams like tiny fragments of forgotten hours, moving so slowly they seemed suspended outside of time itself. Henrik unlocked the door before the streets awakened. The familiar scent of old wood, polished brass, and machine oil welcomed him back. Unchanged, patient, dependable. Everything was exactly where he had left it. Everything except the silence. It felt different now. Not empty, expectant. He removed his coat, placed it on the old wooden chair, and stood before his father's clock. Its hands remained fixed. 8 minutes past 6. A moment preserved so perfectly that it almost seemed intentional. Henrik rested his fingertips against the polished oak case. The wood was cool. He remembered another morning, decades earlier, when those same hands, his father's larger, steadier hands, had rested on the same clock. Never force a movement, his father had said. If time wishes to stop, let it explain itself first. At the time, Henrik thought he was talking about gears. Years later, he understood he had been talking about people. So once again, he waited, not because he lacked the skill to open the case, but because patience had always repaired things that tools never could. Outside, the city unfolded at its familiar pace. The baker carried fresh bread through narrow streets. A bicycle rolled softly across damp stones. The canals reflected a sky still deciding whether it wished to become blue. Bruges never hurried into morning. It allowed each hour to arrive on its own. Henrik had learned from the city as much as he had learned from his father. The first customer entered shortly after 9. A young woman carrying a small travel clock wrapped in a linen cloth. It belonged to my grandmother, she whispered. Henrik smiled gently. So does every good clock, he replied. She looked confused for a moment. Then she smiled too, because she understood. No clock truly belongs to the person holding it. It belongs to everyone who listened to its quiet company through ordinary days. After she laughed, Henrik finally opened his father's clock. The brass screws loosened with almost no resistance. The back panel lifted away. Sunlight reached the movement for the first time in years. Every gear remained clean. Every spring appeared healthy. No broken teeth, no rust, No dust heavy enough to stop such a mechanism. Everything was exactly as it should have been, and yet it did not move. Henrik leaned closer. Then he noticed it. A single feather, small, gray, caught gently between the lower frame and the pendulum, not wedged, not trapped, simply resting there. He lifted it with extraordinary care. It weighed almost nothing. Perhaps it had drifted through an open window days before. Perhaps weeks, perhaps longer. Such a tiny thing, yet enough to quiet 43 years of uninterrupted motion. Henrik smiled to himself. Sometimes life never demands great force to change direction. Sometimes it asks only for the weight of a feather. He set the feather beside the clock instead of throwing it away. Not everything that interrupts us deserves to be discarded. Some interruptions become lessons, others become memories. The best become both. With one careful motion, he nudged the pendulum. Left, right, left. The familiar rhythm returned. Soft, steady, patient. Tick, tick, tick. The sound filled the workshop once more, not loudly, but completely. Henrik closed his eyes. It was the same sound he had fallen asleep to as a child. The same sound that had accompanied winters, summers, celebrations, and quiet evenings that no one remembers until much later. He realized then that the clock had never measured his life. It had accompanied it. There was a difference, a profound one. Outside, another light rain began to fall over Bruges. The drops touched the canal without urgency, each ripple fading gently into the next. Nothing in nature seemed interested in perfection, only continuation. And perhaps that was enough. Henrik returned to his workbench. Another watch waited, another story. Another fragment of someone else's life, asking not to be made younger, only to keep moving. The workshop breathed again, and somewhere beyond the rain, the city continued counting its days, not loudly, not quickly, but faithfully, just as it always had. The rain remained through the afternoon, not the kind that hurried people beneath umbrellas, but the gentle rain that softened every sound until the entire city seemed wrapped in quiet. Inside the workshop, the clocks continued their endless conversation. No two sounded exactly alike. One ticked with youthful confidence. Another hesitated before every second, as though considering whether it wished to continue. An old wall clock breathed in long, patient intervals, while a tiny carriage clock whispered so softly that Henrik could hear it only when the room itself became perfectly still. Visitors often asked how he tolerated so many different rhythms. Henrik always answered the same way. You don't listen to every clock. You listen to the room they create together. Most people nodded politely. Few truly understood. As the afternoon faded, Henrik opened a narrow wooden drawer beneath his workbench. Inside lay dozens of small envelopes. Each was labeled with nothing more than a date. No names, no descriptions, just moments. He chose one almost at random. Inside rested a single brass gear no larger than a fingernail. It belonged to the first clock he had repaired alone. He had been 19. Certain that skill was everything. Certain that perfect hands could solve every problem. His father had watched quietly from across the room. When Henrik proudly announced the repair was finished, his father simply asked, "Did you learn the clock?" Henrik had frowned. "What do you mean?" His father smiled. "You repaired the mechanism, but did you learn why it waited for you?" Only years later did Henrik understand. Every broken clock arrives carrying two stories. One belongs to metal. The other belongs to the person who carried it through the door. Ignoring either one means leaving the repair unfinished. The evening shadows stretched across the floorboards. Golden light filtered through the old windows, warming shelves that had held the same clocks for decades. Dust shimmered like tiny stars suspended in ember. Henrik looked around the workshop. Every scratch in the wood had a memory. Every worn corner had been polished by countless hands. The building itself had become another clock, not one that measured seconds, one that measured lives. A little before closing, a boy stopped outside the window, perhaps 10 years old. He stood without speaking, staring at the moving pendulums. Henrik noticed him but said nothing. After several minutes, he opened the door. "Would you like to come in?" The boy hesitated, then nodded. He walked slowly among the clocks, his eyes moving from one face to another. "They ray all different," he whispered. "They are. Which one is the best?" Henrik smiled. He had been asked that question many times. His answer never changed. "The one someone is waiting to hear again." The boy looked puzzled. Then he noticed the old floor clock in the corner. It struck the hour. One deep note, then another. The sound filled the room without demanding attention. The boy closed his eyes while it echoed. When the final note faded, he smiled without realizing it. "I like that one." Henrik nodded. "I thought you might." Before leaving, the boy turned back. "Do clocks ever get tired?" Henrik considered the question carefully. "Not tired," he said, "but sometimes they need someone to remember them." The boy accepted the answer as children often do with complete trust. He waved goodbye and disappeared into the evening mist. Henrik watched until the street became empty once more. Then he quietly repeated the boy-asked question to himself. Do clocks ever get tired? Perhaps not, but people did, and perhaps that was why clocks existed in the first place. To continue moving gently while people rested, to keep the rhythm of ordinary life safe until morning returned. Night settled over Bruges once again. The lamps along the canals reflected in the dark water like scattered stars. Inside the workshop, Henrik wound the last clock before preparing to leave. One by one, the ticking blended into a calm, familiar harmony. The room no longer sounded like dozens of separate mechanisms. It sounded like a single peaceful heartbeat. Henrik extinguished the lamp. In the darkness, the clocks continued, steady, patient, faithful, as they had yesterday, as they would tomorrow, and as long as someone cared enough to listen, time would never truly be alone. The following evening arrived wrapped in a gentle mist that softened every corner of Bruges. The narrow streets glistened beneath rows of old lanterns, their golden reflections drifting across the canals like ribbons of liquid light. The city seemed suspended between memory and dream, where every stone carried centuries of quiet footsteps and every bridge remembered conversations long forgotten. Inside the workshop, Henrik finished winding the final clock before placing the small brass key back into its velvet-lined drawer. The familiar chorus of ticking surrounded him, steady, calm, comforting. For most people, the sounds would have blended into meaningless repetition. For Henrik, every rhythm carried its own voice. Some clocks sounded hopeful, others patient. A few carried the slow weariness of generations that had faithfully measured lives far longer than their makers had ever imagined. He listened for several moments before blowing out the oil lamp near the workbench. That was when the bell above the front door rang. It was late, far later than anyone usually visited. Henrik crossed the room and opened the door. A woman stood outside. She appeared neither young nor old. Her dark coat was untouched by the damp air, and beneath the brim of her hat her expression remained peaceful, almost timeless. She greeted him with a quiet smile. "I am sorry to arrive after closing." Henrik simply nodded. "The clocks are still awake," he replied. "So am I." She stepped inside. The bell above the door settled back into silence. For reasons Henrik could not explain, the workshop itself seemed to grow quieter, as though every clock had paused to notice the stranger. The woman carried a small wooden box. Its walnut surface had faded with age, its corners softened by countless careful hands. She placed it gently upon the counter. "I believe these belong here." Henrik looked at her. "I've never seen this box before." "I know," she answered so naturally that the words sounded less like an explanation than a certainty. Henrik lifted the lid. Inside rested a single pocket watch unlike any he had encountered. The silver case had darkened with time, yet delicate engravings still circled its surface like winding vines. There was no family crest, no initials, no date, only a single inscription, carved so finely it almost disappeared beneath the metal astage. Time remembers those who listen. Henrik read the words twice. Something about them stirred a memory just beyond reach. Not a sentence he had heard, a feeling, as though someone had whispered it many years ago. He carefully opened the watch. Its hands were motionless. The balance wheel stood perfectly still. Yet when he leaned closer, he realized something impossible. There was no damage, no broken spring, no missing gear. The mechanism appeared flawless. It simply refused to move. The woman watched him without impatience. You noticed. Henrik looked up. It should be running. It should. But it isn't. No. Silence settled gently between them. Not uncomfortable, only thoughtful. Finally, Henrik asked the question that had begun forming the moment she entered. Who owned this watch? The woman lowered her eyes. I don't know. You don't know. I only know it always finds the person meant to repair it. Henrik frowned. Where did you get it? She smiled with quiet kindness. My grandfather asked me to deliver it. And where did he find it? He said it had been waiting. Henrik almost smiled. That sounded like something the old craftsmen of Bruges would have said centuries ago. Objects did not wait. People did. Yet somehow, looking at the silent watch resting in his hands, he wasn't entirely certain. Before he could ask another question, the woman reached into the box and removed a folded piece of paper, yellowed with remarkable age. She placed it beside the watch. Don't open this tonight. Henrik looked at the envelope. Why? Because some stories begin only after you've spent one night wondering about them. She closed the lid of the box. Then, with the same quiet grace with which she had arrived, she walked toward the door. Henrik followed. The evening mist drifted through the narrow street beyond the threshold. He blinked only once. When he looked again, she was gone. No footsteps, no closing gate, only the soft reflection of lantern light trembling across the canal. Henrik remained standing in the doorway for a long while. Behind him, dozens of clocks continued their patient conversation. Before him, Bruges disappeared into silver fog, and resting upon his workbench, a watch that should have been alive, waited in perfect silence. Henrik did not touch the letter, not because he feared what it might contain, but because the woman's words lingered in the room long after she had disappeared into the mist. Some stories begin only after you've spent one night wondering about them. He had spent his entire life learning that patience often revealed more than haste ever could. So he placed the folded letter beside the silent pocket watch, extinguished the last lamp, and left the workshop exactly as it was. That night, sleep arrived gently but never completely. He dreamed of corridors lined with clocks that had no faces. Pendulums moved without sound. Invisible hands turned unseen gears. Somewhere far ahead, a single watch continued to tick, though he could never reach it. When morning came, the dream faded like fog over the canals, leaving behind only a strange sense of familiarity. Bruges awakened beneath a pale silver sky. The rain had disappeared, leaving every cobblestone washed clean and shining softly beneath the early light. Henrik unlocked the workshop just as the cathedral bells welcomed another day. The room greeted him with its familiar harmony. Dozens of clocks marked the passing hours in gentle agreement. Only one remained silent. The mysterious pocket watch rested exactly where he had left it. Still, patient, waiting, he prepared a pot of tea before sitting at the workbench. There would be no interruptions, no repairs, no customers. Today belonged to this watch alone. For nearly an hour he examined every component through his magnifying loupe. The case had been handcrafted by someone whose skill bordered on impossible. Each engraving flowed naturally into the next, as though carved by time itself rather than by human hands. The hinges showed almost no wear. The crystal contained no scratches. Even the tiny screws remained perfectly aligned. It was old, very old, yet preserved with extraordinary care. Finally, Henrik opened the movement. He expected hidden damage, a fractured jewel, a weakened spring, perhaps corrosion concealed beneath the polished bridges. Instead, he found perfection. Every wheel turned freely. Every pivot rested exactly where it belonged. Nothing resisted. Nothing failed. Mechanically, the watch should have sprung to life the instant it was wound. Yet even after several careful turns of the crown, nothing happened. No tick, no vibration, only silence. Henrik leaned back in his chair. In 43 years, he had never seen anything quite like it. His eyes drifted toward the unopened letter. The paper had yellowed with age, its edges softened by decades of careful preservation. Across the front, written in elegant fountain pen script, were only 6 words: "For the one who still listens." Henrik stared at the sentence for several moments. It did not feel addressed to a name. It felt addressed to a kind of person. Slowly, he broke the wax seal. Inside rested a single sheet. The handwriting was beautiful, measured, deliberate, unmistakably belonging to another century. It read, "If this watch has reached your hands, then the city has remembered you. Do not search for what is broken. Nothing here is broken. This watch has never measured hours. It measures remembrance. When the final keeper is ready, the watch will begin again. Until then, listen." There was no signature, no date, nothing to reveal who had written it. only a small symbol pressed into the bottom corner, a tiny hourglass enclosed within a circle. Henrik felt a quiet shiver pass through him. He had seen that symbol before, not recently, not even as an apprentice. Much earlier, as a child, his father had owned an old leather-bound notebook that was never kept with the other repair manuals. Henrik remembered seeing the same hourglass drawn inside its cover. Whenever he asked about it, his father would gently close the book and smile. One day, he always said, but not today. Henrik had forgotten the notebook for years. Now, suddenly, every memory returned with remarkable clarity. The shelf, the worn leather, the faint scent of cedar wood, the careful way his father handled it. He stood immediately. Crossing the workshop, he climbed the narrow staircase leading to the attic storage room. Dust-covered forgotten shelves filled with wooden boxes, spare clock cases, and journals collected across generations. Sunlight slipped through a tiny window beneath the roof, illuminating countless floating particles that drifted lazily through the still air. Henrik searched slowly. Methodically, he knew exactly what he was looking for. After several minutes, his hand paused. Hidden behind a weathered shipping crate rested a thin leather notebook wrapped in faded linen. His father's notebook, exactly where memory had promised it would be. Henrik brushed away decades of dust before carrying it downstairs. The leather creaked softly as he opened the cover. There it was, the same small hourglass, the same circle, the same symbol from the mysterious letter. Beneath it, written in his father's familiar handwriting, appeared a single sentence. Every keeper believes he repairs clocks. Only a few discover they are protecting stories. Henrik closed his eyes. For the first time since inheriting the workshop, he understood there had always been something his father intended to tell him, something he had never lived long enough to explain. Outside, the afternoon bells echoed gently across Bruges. Inside the workshop, every clock continued its quiet rhythm. Every clock except one. The silent pocket watch lay upon the velvet cloth, unchanged. And yet, as Henrik looked at it once more, he noticed something he was certain had not been there before. The second hand had moved. Not a full second, not even half. Only the smallest fraction. So slight that anyone else might have dismissed it as imagination. Henrik did not. He smiled softly. Then, for the first time, he whispered to the watch as though greeting an old friend. "I think we're finally ready to begin." Morning unfolded with quiet certainty. The mist that had lingered over Bruges for days finally began to lift, revealing the graceful outlines of old stone bridges and narrow brick houses reflected in the still canals. Sunlight rested gently upon the rooftops, warming the city without disturbing its peaceful rhythm. Henrik arrived at the workshop carrying his father's notebook beneath one arm. He did not place it on the workbench immediately. Instead, he brewed a fresh pot of tea, wound the clocks that required winding, opened the front shutters, and greeted the familiar silence that had accompanied nearly every morning of his adult life. Only after the room had settled into its natural rhythm did he sit down. Some stories deserved to be entered slowly. The notebook was far older than he remembered. Its pages had yellowed into shades of ivory, their edges softened by decades of careful turning. His father had written with remarkable precision, each letter balanced as though it, too, belonged to the world of gears and pendulums. Most of the early pages contained ordinary notes, repairs, measurements, sketches of unusual escapements, names of craftsmen long forgotten. Then, halfway through the notebook, everything changed. The handwriting slowed. The entries became longer, less technical, more personal. At the top of one page stood a title, "The First Keeper." Henrik felt his heartbeat slow. He began to read. Many believe this workshop was built by my grandfather. Others believe it belonged to his father before him. Both are mistaken. The workshop existed long before our family crossed its threshold, nearly 3 centuries ago. When Bruges had not yet surrendered its importance to larger cities, there lived a watchmaker named Elias Vermeer. Some called him the finest craftsman in Flanders. Others claimed he possessed impossible patience. Neither description captured the truth. Elias did not repair clocks because he loved mechanisms. He repaired them because he believed every clock carried the memory of the home in which it had lived. Henrik paused. Outside, a bicycle passed slowly across the cobblestones. Somewhere nearby, a church bell marked the passing hour. The workshop seemed to grow quieter, inviting him deeper into the story. His father continued. Elias often said that metal remembers touch, wood remembers warmth, glass remembers light, and time remembers kindness. People left when they heard such things. Elias never argued. He simply continued his work. According to the notebook, travelers crossed great distances to visit Elias, not because his repairs lasted longer than anyone else's, but because something unusual happened after his work was complete. Families claimed old clocks somehow sounded different, gentler, warmer, almost comforting. Widows said they slept better after hearing a restored clock return to life. Children who had feared the silence after losing grandparents found peace in familiar ticking echoing through quiet homes. No one could explain why. Elias never attempted to. He only smiled and accepted another watch waiting patiently upon his bench. Years passed, The notebook described wars, harsh winters, floods, and changing governments. Generations came and went, yet the workshop remained, not untouched by history, but faithful to its purpose. Each keeper inherited more than tools. They inherited a promise: never refuse a clock that arrives with hope. Never hurry a repair that requires understanding. And never forget, some people bring you watches, others bring you their hearts. Learn the difference. Henrik slowly closed the notebook. He looked around the workshop with new eyes. The worn wooden floor, the polished counter, the shelves darkened by centuries of sunlight. He had always believed these walls protected clocks. Now he wondered whether they had been protecting stories all along. His attention returned to the mysterious pocket watch. The silver case reflected the morning light in quiet, shifting patterns. Without thinking, Henrik reached for it. The metal felt warmer than before. Not warm from sunlight, warm as though someone else had been holding it only moments earlier. He opened the cover. The hands remained still, yet something had changed. A faint sound emerged from within the movement. Not a tick, not yet. More like the distant breath of a sleeping mechanism, gathering the strength to awaken after a very long dream. Henrik smiled. There was no need to force it. Whatever journey this watch had taken, it had finally reached the place where it belonged. Late that afternoon, an elderly priest entered the workshop. Henrik recognized him immediately. Father Luke had served the nearby church for nearly 30 years. He rarely brought anything for repair. Today, however, he carried an old wooden chest wrapped carefully in linen. "I believe," the priest said softly, "this belongs with your family as history." Henrik looked at the chest, then at the priest. "What is it?" Father Luke rested a gentle hand upon the weathered lid. "It has remained beneath the church archives for longer than anyone remembers." He paused before adding, "And yesterday, someone left a note asking that it finally be returned to the last keeper." Henrik's expression grew still. "The last keeper?" The priest nodded. "I do not know who wrote the note. There was no signature, only a small symbol." Henrik already knew what he was about to hear. "The hourglass?" he asked quietly. Father Luke's eyes widened. "You've seen it before?" Henrik glanced toward the silent pocket watch resting on the workbench. "Yes," he answered. "I believe the story has only just begun." The priest followed his gaze. For a brief moment, neither man spoke. Outside, the evening bells drifted across Bruges with calm, familiar grace. Inside the workshop, every clock continued its patient rhythm. Every clock, except the silver watch. It remained silent, but no longer lifeless. It felt as though it was listening, waiting for the moment when the past and the present would finally become one. Night settled gently over Bruges, wrapping the city in a quiet that felt older than memory itself. The last visitors had disappeared from the narrow streets. Cafe windows glowed softly beside the canals, their reflections trembling upon the dark water before fading into the slow current. Somewhere in the distance, a violin played a melody so delicate that it seemed less like music and more like another voice belonging to the city. Inside the workshop, Henrik remained alone. The old wooden chest rested upon his workbench. He did not rush to open it. His father had taught him that curiosity and impatience were not the same thing. Curiosity listens, impatience interrupts. Tonight, he intended to listen. He lit a single oil lamp. Its warm light spread across the walnut surface of the chest, revealing carvings almost invisible beneath centuries of wear. Running along the edges was the same familiar symbol, the hourglass enclosed within a circle. But this time, something surrounded it. 12 tiny stars, each one engraved with extraordinary precision. Henrik traced them gently with his fingertips. The pattern awakened another memory. Years ago, as a young apprentice, he had asked his father why every old craftsman left behind a personal signature. His father had smiled. The greatest craftsmen never signed their work. They left something quieter, so only those who truly looked would find it. Henrik understood now. The symbol had never been a decoration. It had been an invitation. The brass lock opened with almost no effort. Inside, wrapped in faded blue linen, rested 3 objects. The first was an old compass made of polished brass. Its needle had long since stopped pointing north. Instead, it rested toward the southwest as though fixed upon a destination only it could recognize. The second object was a folded map of Bruges. At first glance it appeared ordinary, but when Henrik unfolded it beneath the lamplight, he noticed dozens of tiny handwritten marks scattered across the city. Each mark corresponded not to churches or markets, but to homes, simple houses, small workshops, quiet places where ordinary families had once lived. The third object was a leather journal, older than his father's, older even than the workshop itself. Across its cover, nearly erased by time, were 2 words: Elias Vermeer. Henrik remained perfectly still. For several long seconds, he simply looked at the journal. The name no longer belonged to legend. It rested in his hands. He opened the first page with extraordinary care. The ink had faded, yet every word remained readable. The opening sentence was simple: time cannot be owned. It can only be shared. Henrik continued reading. When people bring me a clock, they believe they are asking for more years. They are mistaken. No craftsman can create another hour. What we can preserve is something far more precious. We preserve the sound that welcomes a child home, the rhythm beside which two people grew old together, the familiar ticking that filled a silent room after laughter had gone. Every clock remembers the life it witnessed. A careful hand merely helps it speak again. Henrik slowly lowered the journal. His father had believed these words, not because they were written, because he had lived by them every day. Suddenly, the workshop felt different, not larger, deeper, as though every repaired clock upon its shelves carried invisible threads connecting countless families across generations. No wonder people often cried when they heard an old clock begin ticking again. Perhaps they were not hearing metal. Perhaps they were hearing home. A soft sound interrupted his thoughts. Tick. Henrik looked up immediately. The mysterious silver watch lay exactly where he had left it. Another sound followed. Tick. Long silence, then tick. Not steady, not yet, but unmistakably alive. Henrik's heart remained calm, though his eyes reflected quiet amazement. He did nothing, he simply listened. Each delicate beat sounded like the first drops of rain after a long summer. Gentle, uncertain, hopeful. The watch was awakening on its own. At that very moment, a breeze drifted through the slightly open window. Its touch was so light that only a few loose pages stirred. One page of Elias Vermeer's journal turned by itself. Henrik glanced down. His eyes settled upon a passage written near the bottom. When the watch of remembrance begins to wake, another keeper will soon arrive. Do not search for them. They will find you. Henrik read the sentence twice. Before he could continue, the small bell above the workshop door rang. Once, softly, he looked toward the entrance. The room beyond the counter appeared empty. He walked to the door and opened it. The street lay silent beneath the moonlight. No footsteps, no visitors. Only the faint shimmer of lanterns reflected in the canal. As he prepared to close the door, something caught his eye. Resting neatly upon the doorstep was a small parcel wrapped in brown paper and tied with faded blue string. There was no name, no address, only a single line written in careful handwriting. For the keeper who has remembered how to listen. Henrik lifted the parcel gently. It felt surprisingly light, yet somehow it carried the quiet weight of another story waiting to be told. Behind him, the silver pocket watch continued its slow awakening. Tick, silence, tick, as if, after a century of waiting, time itself had finally decided to take its first careful steps once again. The night deepened after the parcel arrived. Bruges outside the workshop felt almost motionless now. as if the city had entered the same state of attentive silence that filled Henrik's room. Even the canals seemed to move more slowly, reflecting the moon in long, broken ribbons of light that drifted without urgency. Henrik placed the small parcel on the workbench. He did not open it immediately. Instead, he turned back toward the silver pocket watch. Its rhythm had changed. What began as irregular hesitation had become something more structured, still fragile, still forming, but undeniably intentional. Tick paused tick as if time itself was learning how to breathe again. Henrik leaned closer, but he did not interfere. He had learned over the years that some mechanisms repair themselves best when they are not disturbed. Only when the watch settled into a slow, imperfect rhythm did he finally return to the parcel. The blue string loosened easily. Inside, wrapped in a layer of aged linen, rested a thin brass key, no larger than a fingertip. Its surface carried intricate engravings identical to those on the old chest from the church archives. Henrik's expression shifted slightly. He already understood. The key was not for a lock. It was for a memory. He moved to the wooden chest and studied it again under the lamp. The hourglass symbol surrounded by 12 stars now seemed less decorative and more intentional, almost like a map disguised as ornament. Henrik inserted the key into a hidden seam beneath the lock plate. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soft mechanical breath, the chest released its final resistance. The lid opened. Inside, the air smelled not of dust, but of old paper and cedar, preserved as if time itself had been carefully contained. At the top lay a final journal, even older than the previous one. Its cover was darker, almost blackened with age. Across it, in faint lettering, were 3 words: the final keeper. Henrik felt something unfamiliar tighten gently in his chest. Not fear, not anticipation, recognition. He opened the journal. The first pages were incomplete sketches of clocks unlike any he had ever repaired. Some had no hands. Others had multiple pendulums moving in opposite directions. A few appeared to measure not hours, but emotional states, joy, absence, memory. But halfway through the book, the writing became clearer, more deliberate, more urgent. Elias Vermeer believed that time does not pass evenly. He believed it collects in objects, in places, in the things people forget but never truly lose. A clock is not a machine that measures time. It is a vessel that holds it. Henrik paused. The idea should have sounded impossible. Yet nothing in his life as a clockmaker truly contradicted it. He had seen clocks stop without damage. He had seen others survive floods, fires, and centuries of neglect only to begin ticking again as if they had simply been waiting. He continued reading. There exists a final mechanism, not built to measure time, but to gather it. When enough memories accumulate within its structure, it will awaken, not to tell the present, but to return what was never truly lost. Henrik slowly lowered the journal. The workshop felt different again. Not louder, not brighter, but deeper, as if space itself had widened slightly around him. Behind him, the silver pocket watch ticked more confidently now, still uneven, still human in its imperfection, but alive enough to echo through the room like a heartbeat slowly finding stability. A sudden sound interrupted his thoughts, not from the watch, from the chest. A faint resonance, metal shifting against unseen tension. Henrik turned immediately. Inside the chest, beneath the remaining fabric lining, something had begun to move. A second layer, hidden beneath the structure itself. He carefully lifted the inner panel and stopped. Beneath it lay a circular mechanism embedded directly into the wood. Far too large to belong to any pocket watch, too intricate for any wall clock, too precise to belong to any known instrument of timekeeping. At its center rested a hollow space shaped perfectly like the silver watch. Henrik exhaled slowly. This was not storage, it was alignment. At that moment, the pocket watch's ticking changed again. It grew stronger, more consistent, as if responding to something it had been waiting to recognize. Henrik placed the watch carefully into the hollow space. For a brief second, nothing occurred. Then a soft click, not mechanical, almost like recognition. The entire structure beneath the chest responded, very gently, very precisely, as if a long-forgotten system had just acknowledged its final missing piece. The room grew quieter, not because sound disappeared, but because everything else had begun to listen. Henrik remained still. The watch continued ticking inside its place, now perfectly synchronized with something larger than itself. The chest, the journals, the symbols, the stories, they were no longer separate objects. They were parts of a single continuity, a system built not to measure time, but to preserve it outside. Somewhere along the canal, a distant bell rang once, only once, then silence returned to Bruges. Inside the workshop, Henrik finally understood what his father had never been able to explain. He had not inherited a shop, he had inherited a responsibility, not to repair clocks, but to maintain what they carried. The silver watch ticked steadily now, no longer uncertain, no longer searching, and for the first time since the beginning of this story it sounded less like a mechanism returning to life, and more like something remembering who it had always been. The workshop no longer felt like a room, it felt like a threshold, not between inside and outside, but between what was remembered and what had been waiting to be remembered. The mechanism beneath the chest remains still now, yet its stillness was different from before. It was no longer dormant. It was complete, as if every missing piece had finally accepted its place in a structure far older than understanding. Henrik did not move for a long time. He simply listened. The silver pocket watch continued to tick within its hollow space, steady and certain, like a heartbeat that had finally found its natural rhythm after a lifetime of searching for the correct body to belong to. Tick, pause, tick, not louder than before, but deeper, as if each sound now carried weight beyond itself. Outside, Bruges drifted through its quiet night. The canals reflected the moon without distortion. The wind passed gently between narrow streets, touching stone that had witnessed centuries of arrivals and departures. Nothing in the city hurried. Nothing insisted. Everything simply continued. Henrik finally spoke, though no one was there to answer. "So this is what you meant," he said softly. His voice did not echo. The workshop absorbed it as if it had always been part of the room. He thought of his father, not as a memory, but as a continuation. All those years of silence around certain books, certain symbols, certain unfinished explanations, they had never been avoidance. They had been preparation. The chest beneath the workbench emitted one final, almost imperceptible shift, not movement, closure, a settling, as if something vast had finally ensured it would no longer need to open again. Henrik understood without needing to test it. Nothing more was hidden. Nothing more needed to be revealed. He looked at the silver watch once more. For the first time, he did not see a broken object. He saw a vessel that had completed its long return, not to time, but to place, to meaning, to continuity. The bell above the workshop door rang softly. Once, Henrik turned. No one entered. No one laughed. Only the sound remained for a moment longer than expected before dissolving into silence. He did not question it. Some things in life do not require explanation, only acknowledgement. Slowly, Henrik closed the workshop for the night. One by one, the clocks dimmed into their natural rhythm of darkness, their ticking continuing not as work, but as presence. He extinguished the oil lamp. The room did not become empty. It became whole. Before leaving, he placed his hand gently on the chest, not as a gesture of possession, but of understanding. "I will continue," he said quietly, not as promise, as recognition. Outside, the air was cool and still. Bruges stretched before him like a story that never truly ends, only pauses between readers. The canals moved with patient inevitability, carrying reflections of a sky that would return tomorrow just as it always had. Henrik walked home along the familiar path, the bridge, the church, the quiet street where light from a single bakery window still lingered even after closing. Everything unchanged, and yet everything different. At home, he placed the father's notebook on the table. He did not open it again. He did not need to. He now understood what it had always been. Not instructions, not history, but continuation. Before sleeping, Henrik sat by the window overlooking the canal. The water moved slowly beneath the night. Somewhere, distant but certain, he could still hear it. The silver watch, not in his workshop, not in his hands, but no longer alone. It had become part of something larger, a rhythm shared between objects, places, and the people who quietly carry time forward without ever noticing they are doing it. Henrik closed his eyes. For the first time in many years, he did not think about broken things waiting to be repaired. He thought about things that never needed repair at all, because they had never truly been broken. Only waiting, and somewhere in the silent workshop of Bruges, the clocks continued their gentle disagreement about the exact shape of time. But none of them were lost anymore. None of them were alone, and none of them had ever been forgotten.